Hello, my fellow webheads. It's your friendly neighborhood Jerry Rasco, and I am here again with you today to look at a new issue of The Amazing Spider-Man. Today, we're going to look at issue number 52. In some cases, the number 52 is a big milestone for a lot of comics. Of course, there are 52 weeks in a year, but Spidey comes out monthly. So we are a few years into the run of The Amazing Spider-Man, but we are getting to some very iconic and important issues. We obviously recently looked at issue number 50 with friend of the channel, Andy Smith, and we are in the third part of this storyline, which introduced the Kingpin of crime to Marvel Comics. So we've got really cool stuff. And so this issue is going to be fun to see how this all plays out. So with that said, let's head over to the comic. Let's check it out together. Okay, so here we have The Amazing Spider-Man 52. And as I say with every video, if you are new to the channel, make sure you go back to the playlist and check it out. I have been reviewing every issue of The Amazing Spider-Man going all the way back to Amazing Fantasy number 15. That also includes the annuals, so we have got a lot of Spider-Man to cover. And there's been a lot of changes as we've gone through, whether that's adding to the supporting cast, simplifying the design. We've changed from original artist Steve Ditko to artist John Romita, and so there's a lot of stuff going on here. And you definitely don't want to miss those issues. Likewise, these episodes come out every Monday at 8 a.m. Central Time. So if you do enjoy the content, again, if you're new here, please consider subscribing to the channel. We are pushing in the year 2026 to reach 1,000 subscribers. We've had more new coming in recently, so thank all of you who did choose to subscribe. Remember, a YouTube subscription is free. That said, when we get to 1,000, we will be doing a free giveaway. I'll cover that again at the end of the video. So here we have the cover of Amazing Spider-Man number 52. It is a really good cover. I like it a lot. I like the figures being in peril. You have a large figures taking up the majority of the space, which is really, really nice. So even if for whatever reason that title of Amazing Spider-Man was covered, you would see Spider-Man chained to, or handcuffed or whatever you want to call it, to this device. J. Jonah Jameson looks like he is also held there, and the water is coming in. The dark background makes the colors and the characters pop and puts all the focus on them. This is an excellent cover and the exact kind of thing that's going to pull someone's attention and go, ooh, I want to pick up this issue. Whether you read the previous issue or not, or you're a regular Spider-Man collector, this is the kind of cover that's going to draw you in. So this is a really, really nice job. Okay, so we go into the regular book and we look at page 1 as the splash. If you're a member and you have been following this series, you know that I like this. I prefer a splash page that starts off right into the story. We're utilizing all the real estate we have to tell this story, and it's exactly what happens here. It sets things up so we know that Spider-Man is out cold. The Kingpin's henchmen have got Jameson as well, and they're taking them away, and the Kingpin is in charge. Let me explain this as well. If again, for anybody who's new, this is a scanned PDF copy of the comic. So back in 2004, Marvel Comics got copies of every issue of Amazing Spider-Man up to that time and scanned every one of them on a big flatbed scanner, saved those files as PDF files, and put them to CD-ROMs, which you could purchase. So back in 2004, I did purchase those. I've taken it, and now we get to look at all of these as they were originally created. So this issue is from 1967 still, so we're still at that time frame, and we are going to see it exactly as it was, with nicks, tears, yellowing of the paper, prints, the advertisements, all that kind of stuff. This is exactly as you would get it from the newsstand in 1967. But I like the splash. I like the big chain here in the foreground. I think that helps set up the depth and the space of this staircase is very nice. The angle is good. I really like this shading technique on the inside. So the light's coming through the door. And so anything that's on this side of this wall is going to be very dark. So you've got this stone pattern. So the way you do that, if you want to shadow it, is you leave the the mortar seems light and you shadow the rocks, that's a really nice technique. I've used it a million times myself. I think it's very effective and very striking, probably more so than the hatching here on the stones, to give you sort of that in between. You have dark, you have light, and then the hatching is sort of in the middle. Sometimes that gets lost in the contours of the stones, so that's where I really like this shadow area where you've got just the mortar is the color. So that's very, very nice. And as well, the Kingpin's massive figure is also really good as well. You can see how much bigger he is than, say, Spidey or Jameson. Very nice here as well. Great foreground. The Kingpin is so menacing. This like hawk-like nose, but with the big jowls and the giant head. The figure is massive. It's clear he's in charge. I really, really like it. I think it is very good. So far in this issue, let me make sure to explain. Like I said, Stan Lee is the writer, John Romita is the penciler, and Mike Esposito, again, is the inker here. I have been up and down on Mike Esposito's inks for the most part. I personally prefer John Romita inking himself, but it seems like Mike Esposito is going to be the regular inker for quite a while. That does help the penciler. You're doing half the work, right? You're penciling it. You don't have to pencil and ink it. So that probably is important in terms of speeding up and keeping on the deadline. In this issue, to this point, I noted I didn't have any super inking issues that I noted that I didn't like. I thought this job was done well. So things like the Kingpin being in the foreground with a very heavy contour line around him is terrific. But then when you have like the next scene where it's a wider shot, we're pulled back on our view and we see more of the area. You have a nice mix of some thicker lines, some thinner lines. So I think that's a good job. Let's see here. So they're putting an unconscious Spidey and Jameson in this room where they're going to lock them to this big metal device and then turn on the water and then let them drown. I did like the weightless, or the dead weight of Spidey. So he's been knocked out by gas. So you see as the guys are carrying, he really feels, and then when they're hooking him up and he's all bent over, it looks like dead weight. I think that's a very nice job of that body language of how they're carrying him and then just how his body sort of flops around. I think that's very good. On this page, I thought I noted in my notes how daintily the Kingpin holds his little cigarette holder, which I think is very funny for a guy so big, right? So that juxtaposition of this big dude with these massive, massive hands gently holding this very fragile little stick, the way he is, I thought was nice. It's nice character development and showing the reader more about the Kingpin and his personality. Yes, he's big. Yes, he's mean. Yes, he's strong, but he prefers fine, delicate things as well. So it's a nice juxtaposition with that character. So I think that is really, really good. Okay, so Spidey, in the story, Spidey wakes up from the gas that had knocked him out and is pretty easily able to snap out of his iron bonds using his spider strength. But of course, the water's still coming in; they're sealed in, so there's a good chance, even though he's free, they could potentially drown anyway. So now he starts spinning some webs, and I like the angle of the turn, the Dutch angle, to make it seem more intense, more exciting. It's the kind of thing that you would definitely see like in television. That camera turns and kind of shoots up a little bit, and again, it just adds a dramatic effect to what we're doing here. The thing I don't like is now we change scenes. So you have this really big panel at the top, and now we're completely changing scenes to the Daily Bugle. What I would like to see, maybe personally, is some of what's happening in this conversation of Jonah and Spidey going back and forth, with Jonah going, "It's all your fault," and then, "No, it isn't," and, "Well, what are you going to do?" "Well, I'm going to try to get us out of here." Some of this back and forth could be done some of these panels could be combined. That's my opinion. You've already got a lot of talking going on. You might as well just add another word balloon here or there. And you could then create space to have this image on the other page. So when you turn the page, we now change scenes. And I think that's so important. It's something that I know I've noted a lot in John Romita's art, is that often he'll do this. He'll end a page, either the previous scene is at the top, or it'll be this scene and then the new scene is at the bottom of the page, as opposed to on the turn. And I'd much rather see it on the turn. It's like cutting to commercial on TV and then coming back, and now you're in a new scene. That transition's a lot easier than it is to do it this way on the same page. So that's just my 2 cents. Let's see here. This is the first, I'm pretty sure, and if somebody knows otherwise, check me in the comments, but I believe this is the first appearance of Robbie Robertson. So, if you're a fan of Spidey, down the road, Robbie Robertson will become a regular part of Spidey and Peter's supporting cast. So you have J. Jonah Jameson is the editor of the paper, but Robbie Robertson is the city editor. So he handles different kinds of stories. He's sort of like, if you will, like an assistant editor almost, right? J. Jonah Jameson's the publisher. He's in charge, but Robbie is sort of under Jameson. And the two of them, as we move ahead, come to odds because Robbie understands what Spidey does, and he's a big backer or supporter of both Spider-Man and Peter, whereas Jameson obviously at times definitely hates Spider-Man, and at times really wants to take advantage of Peter. But we've got Robbie in pretty much most of his full design. He's usually with the pipe, kind of grayish hair. And it's nice to see that character that I recognize from my childhood in like the late 70s and early 80s as being an integral part of Spidey. Now we have Ned Leeds, who is Betty Brant's fiance. They come to the office here, and it's been destroyed because Jameson was kidnapped by the Kingpin's men. Later, you're going to see, so this is Ned Leeds. This face is as generic as it comes. This guy, if you look like at this time frame, this face could be Steve Rogers. This could be Hank Pym Ant-Man. This could be Captain Marvel without his costume. It could be Hawkeye without his costume. It's very, very generic. And then we'll see later Flash Thompson. So I'll cut back to this later, but I'd like to see more characterization. Things that make a character like a Ned Leeds look like Ned Leeds. That's just my opinion. You can see the holdovers from the Ditko era, where Ditko's very, very good at that. His characters were super unique. So Betty Brant has this real unique hairstyle and kind of look. J. Jonah Jameson is a true character. Those characters are the kind of things that really, Aunt May, those early Ditko characters have a lot of uniqueness to them. And some of these supporting characters we're seeing are starting to become a little generic. So that's just my 2 cents. Ned is going to go find out see if he can, because he's a reporter, he's going to see if he can find out what happened to Jameson, see what happened to Frederick Foswell, and he's going to take off and do it. And of course, Betty is very upset because she doesn't like people being in danger. And again, we have this one little panel where we could change scenes. If we could squeeze this panel into this page somewhere, which if this panel was on the previous page, no problem, right? So then we cut back to the scene with Jameson and Spider-Man. That would be a better way to do it, my opinion. I do say this, and I want to read my note about Betty Brant. I don't like the character. Now, I know she was Peter's first girlfriend and made a lot of sense at the time. She didn't like Spider-Man. Her brother dies at the hands of the Doc Ock and his henchmen because he was involved in some shady stuff, and she blames Spider-Man and all this kind of stuff. Betty is so afraid of everything, but only dates men involved in reporting danger. Why doesn't she go find an accountant to marry? I don't understand. So she's just panicked and frozen because Peter takes dangerous photos. Now her new fiance reports on danger. If you're so worried about it, go find somebody else. I don't understand. So I don't like the characterization of Betty Brant. She's never been my favorite character. I think she gets better over the years. There's some ups and downs with Betty Brant, but just at this stage of the game, not my favorite character. This is very nice here as Spidey is making a web balloon basically to trap air so that they'll have air to breathe as the room fills, so they can kind of, sort of, if you're familiar with Pirates of the Caribbean, the original, right? So Johnny Depp and what is his name? The guy who played Legolas. Shoot, I can't remember his name off the top of my head. But they get under a boat, so they turn the boat upside down and pull it underwater with them, so it traps an air bubble, and they walk underwater in the air bubble. So this is the same idea. What I liked about this, one, you've got a bunch of different angles, which are very nice. So Jonah in the foreground, and then it's kind of an upshot into Spidey. So the camera is down here on this water horizon line, but everything is tilted as well. So very nice camera angle and shot there. Then we cut back with this water pipe in the framing. So we see the water coming out, very nice. And again, with the shadows of the web balloon, I like that as well. So we've switched angles, very, very good. Coming here, we see the water's even higher. They're getting closer together to fit under the bubble. But what I really like is this bubble picture. I thought this was really, really good. So obviously, Spidey's web is drawn with these lines and hatching. And then to show the shadow of the figures inside, we do a tighter cross hatching. And I think that is brilliant. It's a great way to show the figures in there without drawing the figures in there. And then as well, the water you can see through, but it's moving, it's churning, it's not going to be as obvious. So just these shadow lines, this is Jameson's body, this is some of Spider-Man's body. Jameson is closer to us than Spidey, so this is a darker shadow through the water. I think that's a wonderful visual representation of these shadows that still tells us the story and gives us all the detail we need. We can tell by the face, this is Jameson, this is Spidey. The hands are there. This is an excellent way to capture that moment. I think that's terrific. Oh yes, and I did say this. Webbing can do anything. So we're at the phase where we've seen it before. Webbing can be boats, paddles, parachutes, crash pads, and now air bubbles. I think Spidey may have done this one time before, but I know, again, his webbing could be anything we want it to be. It could be waterproof, flame-proof, radiation-proof. I mean, it's whatever he needs it to be for the story. So, interestingly enough, here we go. So I thought that was pretty funny. The action begins to ramp up here, and we're going to see bigger panels. And I'm also a big fan of that. So when you have things like these panels where there's a lot of explanation, the readers need to know what's going on. The characters are going to talk, set things up. There's more grid work, more small panels, because the moments are more intimate. We're talking, we're not shouting across rooms, we're not throwing punches, so we can have smaller images with more dialogue balloons. Perfectly fine. But now that the henchmen are coming in to clean things up, and Spidey's going to have to take them out, we're expanding the panel size so that we can see more of Spidey in action. So that's an excellent page composition concept and makes a lot of sense to do. I see this a lot in comics where you have too many panels. I see scripts that call for 7, 8, 9 panels on a page sometimes. And so you're expected to take a panel like this, which might only be about 5 inches by 5 inches square, original, and then shrunk down to comic book size. And you want to put something like this action of Spidey leaping on the wall, dodging a bullet while somebody shoots at him in this itty bitty little panel. I need space. I need room for it to breathe. I need to be able to see some of the environment that's happening in. And so I like these bigger panels. I think it's terrific. I love the way Spidey's dodging the bullet. His spider sense is warning him, which is terrific. He's doing it in a way that only he can by leaping to the wall and then kicking the guy off the wall. So he's kicking while he's stuck to the wall. And as the guy tries to run out the door, I thought this was excellent. He grabs him like not so fast and he pulls him back into this chamber. And the reason he's heading out the door and getting pulled back in is because of the overlapping. And it's subtle, right? This hand coming through the door tells us he was heading that way. There's two things I would have done differently here to even emphasize that further. First, I would have taken the fingertips of this hand. Even though it's back, I would have put these fingertips over the edge of the door. So I might have extended his arm a little bit to show that his arm was through the doorway before he's getting yanked back. It also would stop the tangent here where his fingers are meeting this line almost exactly, and flattening it out. So if you want to overlap it, you've either got to really overlap it and cut that door much closer to his thumb so that we can tell it doesn't just meet at the end of his fingers, it's more in here. Or you've got to overlap the door frame with his hand, which is what I would have done. And then the other thing is I would have probably done the same thing with the bottom of this shoe, is I would have overlapped it over the outside, the bottom threshold, so that he's about to take that step through that threshold of that sealed up door and he's getting pulled back. So those are a couple changes that I would have made to help emphasize that what you're doing visually, that illusion of him being pulled back through that doorway. And then I mentioned this because we're going to see it a few times. Spidey using open hand slaps on the thugs. I mean, so the people forget, maybe not at this point in time. At this point in time, Spidey could probably pick up a small car over his head. Eventually, Spidey gets to the point where he could pick up a city bus. He's no pushover. If you're a super comic nerd and hardcore fan like I am, you probably have or remember things that came out in the 80s and the 90s where for Marvel it was called the Marvel Handbook, the official Marvel Handbook, or the official handbook of the Marvel Universe. And then DC had a thing called Who's Who. And these were these books that would go through and illustrate each character and explain their history, their powers, all that stuff. So in those books as a kid, I remember reading, of course, Spidey was my favorite, so that was the first issue that I got, featured Spider-Man, that he could bench press 10 tons. Now, is that a hard and fast rule? Probably not. But we've seen Spidey do some things with a lot of strength. And if he was to just haul off and punch regular guys, without thinking about it, he'd be crushing in their skulls and killing people pretty quick. So a nice open hand slap to the top of the head, knocking the guy out. I think that's terrific. It's great storytelling. It's reminding us that he doesn't need to use all of his strength and that Spidey is more powerful than we often see. So he breaks out Jonah. And then the other thing I mentioned, again, story-wise, is he takes a moment to reload his web shooters. How many times do we all see it? We probably all complained about, a cowboy movie or a robbery movie or a Western or whatever, where there's a lot of gunplay and people just shoot and shoot and shoot and they never reload the gun, right? When you see things like John Wick movies where he actively is, realistically reloading guns and going, we look at that and we go, that's great. That's a attention to detail. Well, this is the same thing. This is Spidey, and he is paying attention to detail and showing that he has to reload those web shooters every so often. So nice little touch there. I think it's great. He's going and taking out more thugs, and again, more open hand slaps. So he's backhanding this guy, knocking him out. He's grabbing some guys and slapping them around too, which I think is terrific. And then he's giving a guy a little back elbow, but at no point has he just hauled off and punched somebody dead in the face, which I think is really nice. It just goes to show that Spidey, can handle the big threats, but the little guys, he's able to take care of them as well. Jameson knocks himself out because he's an idiot. And then Spidey's heading for the Kingpin. There was something about this face I did not care for. I noted I felt off model. I don't know what it is. I don't know if the face is too big. So again, I've talked about this where John Romita, he simplified the web pattern. And so typically in your Spider-Man web pattern, you have the main radiating circle. So there's one little tiny one right between his eyes. Then the next one comes out about the middle of the eyes. Then there's a second one that comes down, and that's usually the end. And then his chin will come in and would cut off before you'd have another circle there. So maybe that's it. Maybe the bottom of the face is a little too round and not as pointy. And then you would have the third little clip of the top of the head. So that part's right. The eyes look a little narrow to me as well. So when you put it all together, it looks a little off model. Let me see if we have other straight on Spidey faces to compare. So like here's on this one here, he's got the 1, 2, and then 1, 2, 3 at the top. So that's a more accurate or traditional Spidey. Here again, same here. This is a face. So see, the eyes are more, I don't know how to describe it. They're angled slightly. They're more pointy at the corners. You have this, the webbing pattern is right. And then we cut over to this and see how it's, maybe there's not enough white on the inside of the eyes. That's could be part of it. The black outline around looks right, but I don't know, there's not enough white in the eyes. So anyway, the whole thing is kind of screwy. Not my favorite Spider-Man image. Oh yeah, so the Kingpin here is talking to Foswell, and he's trying to decide what he's going to do. So this is Frederick Foswell, former criminal turned reporter turned criminal turned back reporter, now possibly heading back to being a criminal when he thinks the Kingpin is and Spidey's out of the picture and Kingpin's in charge. So the Kingpin's like, what do I need with you? So they're just kind of like, what's happening? And then Kingpin decides, all right, enough's enough, right? This guy's a little weasel, and he doesn't want to. He's upset that people got killed, that Spider-Man and Jameson are killed. He doesn't like that. But here's the deal, right? So Foswell's here. He's looking over his right shoulder as the Kingpin is walking into his office. Kingpin is looking over to his left. You can see his eyes are slightly to the left, so he's looking to his left. Makes sense. He is now in the foreground. Foswell is here. That's Foswell's right arm. So Kingpin is on the right-hand side of Foswell. Now in the next image, he is dead in front of him, squared up, and punching the top of the desk. That makes no sense. That's where what he should have done is he should have turned this essentially 45 degrees so that the Kingpin's right hand, the desk would be on his right side, and he could have slammed his hand down on the desk from the right side and then could have grabbed Foswell. Again, it just doesn't make any sense. I do like the panels, and I like the hulking mass of the Kingpin and how dangerous that is, like how big his hands are, and once he gets a hold of you, it's like this, you're done. But so he slams his fist on the desk, grabs Foswell okay, I get it. So at first I was like, I thought he was like hugging him. Excuse me. Because it almost looked like this would have been the Kingpin's left hand in this corner, but it's not. That's Foswell's left hand, and this little thumb is the Kingpin's hand. He's got his lapel, but I missed that detail, and because I just couldn't tell what was what, I just looked like he had like grabbed him and was gonna maybe like bear hug crush him or something. So Foswell's hand might be too big. It would have been better to maybe not even have that hand there at all, and that would have been much clearer. So I don't know what the use of that hand was. This where he's just bending over him and that giant fist held up. This is great. Foswell's hand is way too big though. So for a guy that's supposed to be a little skinny guy, and the Kingpin's supposed to be a monster, you see how big the Kingpin's hand are. hand is. And look how big this Foswell hand is. This should be much thinner. This little dude is like, he's a guy that had to wear, when he was the criminal, when he was the big man, he had to wear lifts in his shoes to make him bigger, and an oversized suit because he was identified as being a little small guy. So that hand is gigantic for Foswell. Spidey busts in, and now they're going to tussle. And again, this is where I have no problem with the big image of Spidey busting in the door. That part is great. Maybe these two panels could have been made a little bit smaller on the top. You bring this one up, and then you could put this at the bottom of the page. And again, now we go from page on the left to now a new scene on the right. Instead of this mixed, I'm halfway through a scene and now I'm cutting to something else. Flash Thompson has returned. I don't know. I tried to look through. I went about 10 issues later looking through to see if I found any more mention of Flash Thompson. The next couple issues he is going to be around, but I don't know if he is on leave or if he's come home from the military. It feels like he just left just a few issues ago. So I'm not really sure if this is a permanent thing or if Flash will be heading back to military service and then coming back later. So not 100%. Time will just have to tell. Everybody's happy to see him, of course. Now, this is what I was saying. So Flash Thompson, when you saw Flash with the way that Steve Ditko drew him, he had kind of a thick face. His hair was very curly, and it was very easy to identify him. But if I take this look right here, this handsome dude, and we go back to, let's go back to, oops. And we're going to go back to the image I was telling you with Ned Leeds. Now, here's Ned Leeds. So there's Ned and his wavy blonde hair, square jaw, right? And now we go back to Flash. That could be the same guy. So that's where I'm saying, like, we need some differentiation. We need something to identify these characters. So even though we don't see him all the time, Harry Osborn has a very unique look. Gwen is easily identifiable from all the background girls. Frederick Foswell, great character. Again, all these characters are Steve Ditko characters. So even though Flash was too, but we need a little something like, actually, so this image here is a little more traditional Flash. That looks a little better. He's got a little bit of a chubbier face, the big grin. But when I saw this, I was like, that could be Ned Leeds. I can barely tell the difference. So they're all talking about how happy they are, what's going on with Peter, all this kind of stuff. We're going to have a party. Everybody's trying to tell Flash, like, Peter's not such a bad guy. Meanwhile, Peter as Spider-Man is wrestling with the Kingpin. And the Kingpin is doing okay for himself. And again, I don't know if Spidey thinks he's pulling his punches, but he does give him a big wallop here. So while he was, hand slapping thugs and knocking him out, he double fist punches the Kingpin, knocks him down, but doesn't knock him out. So it just goes to show how tough, even though he's just a regular human being, how tough the Kingpin is. Foswell grabs a gun and is going to see if he can find Jameson. So you're still on the fence about where Foswell's loyalties lie. Is he going to try to take out Jameson? Is he going to try to take out the Kingpin? I don't know, but usually bad things happen when bad people decide to grab guns. So we'll see. Great punch with the Kingpin. This is a nice fight. I just said it's a good short fight. Spidey kind of using his abilities quite well, but the Kingpin takes off. He's knows discretion is the better part of valor, and decides, time to go. This is not the place to make my stand. I love these two panels down here. We're going to blow those up. So I think they are awesome. Him struggling to pry apart these hidden bookcase doors. Yeah, so Spidey trying to pry these doors apart. You can see the strain and the way the body is hunched up to use those back and shoulder muscles. His feet off the floor because he's flexing like that. I think that's a really, really nice bit of body language there. Excellent drawing. And then the escape elevator explodes. So it was booby trapped, and the way he reels back from the explosion, bent nearly in half. Excellent reaction to the explosion. I think that is really, really good. So then he's like, okay, I'm going to go see if I can I'll go get Jameson. I'll see if I can find the Kingpin. And in the way to avoid the traps is Spidey decides to run along the wall. Great. I love it. Great move. Make Spidey do things that only Spidey can do. So terrific idea of having him run along the walls. And it's a very nice pose. It's a basic running pose, which in and of itself wouldn't be super exciting. But when you turn it sideways and have him on the wall, super dynamic. So that is a really, really good piece there. Now, Foswell is going through the corridors looking for Jameson. Here is a small problem. So he is in an area that's dark, shadowy, and there's some very clear light. So he's coming from the shadow into the light. This is you could look at it as a metaphor for Foswell is leaving the shadows and heading to the light. So as quick as he flipped back to being potentially a criminal, he is flipping to do the right thing, which is make sure Jameson isn't killed. The only thing I don't like is so the way the shadow is, he is blocking the light. The light is between us. He is between us and the light source. So there should be a shadow on the ground that he should be casting back into these shadows. So it's a small thing, but it would just ground him and make it feel like he's stepping on something as opposed to just a character floating in a color space. That's all. The guys are chasing him. Foswell's like, come here. And they shoot at Jameson and hit Foswell in the stomach, it appears like. And this is a terrific turn of Spidey's head. Great close-up. Now, I've talked a lot about this pattern. The pattern works when Spidey's looking straight at you because there's more forehead, top of his head, than there is bottom of his head. So that's why you see only 2 radiating lines typically on his face, and then 1, 2, 3 at the top of the head as it curves back. But here, we're looking down and up at Spider-Man. We're down lower. We're looking kind of up at Spider-Man, almost under that chin a little bit. And this is where they made the right adjustment. So little itty-bitty circle between his eyes. 1, 2 loops. And then you lose the top one because the top of his head is further away from you. The chin is coming down, and you get that third line at the bottom of the chin. That's excellent. That is a really good way of drawing the web pattern to help emphasize Spidey's head being tilted up, down, left, right, etc. So that is really, really nice. He gets the guys, bonks them together. Again, he could have just punched them both. But I like the way he's handling these henchmen with, again, more kid gloves, if you will, but it's certainly effective. He's able to knock them both out quite easily. Foswell dies. So he got shot. The gunshot killed him. He died saving Jameson from these henchmen. And so we're going to, so Jameson's like, we're going to do what we can to tell the world that he was a hero, right? We're going to give him a good ending instead of he almost turned back to crime. What they're trying to do here. So again, I'm going to zoom in. So again, you can see Jameson's face is all in shadow. There's a shadow to this side of Foswell. So the light is kind of coming behind the characters. And so they should be in a lot of shadow. The front of Jameson is fairly shadowed. They're trying to do that with Spider-Man. And the way that you do it, you have a couple of options here. You can completely black out the figure like you did in Jameson's face, or you don't want to, because the Spidey costume is very important, recognizable, and stuff like that. You just don't want a bunch of silhouetted figures. So that there's this hard line that comes down the edge of Spidey on his legs, on his arms. You can see it there. And what they're trying to accomplish is called rim lighting. So basically what you're going to do is when you have a bright light source and an object, so you can do it, you can look at, don't stare at the sun, but if you have like a lamp, like I have a light here, right? It's not a ring light, but it's a light for this. If I put my hand between that and me, it blocks, you could see on my face, it blocks the light from me. And when you look at your hand, there's this sort of glow around the outside of your hand. And that's what they're trying to accomplish here with Spidey. I applaud them for the attempt. I think in today's world, it would be very, very simple to do. We see it all the time. I can see exactly how that would be pulled off. We would do it with computer color. It'd be great. With the coloring techniques of the time, I just don't think it worked. Understand what they're trying to do, but it just becomes confusing because you can't shadow Spidey enough to make it clear that the light is hitting him from behind and there's this rim lighting on the backside. So, nice attempt, A for effort, but again, I don't feel like it worked all that well. So we wrap things up. Crowd scenes, always hard, but I like the upper angle. It puts us in the position with Spidey. So down below, we've got the police. We've got, they're taking Foswell's dead body away. We've got an onlooker group of pedestrians. Ned Leeds arrives on scene first to explain what's going on, or to find out what's going on. But the upper view of us looking down on it puts us, we are with Spidey. We are not one of these people watching down here. We are up here with him. And that is nice. That gives us that bird's eye view of the whole situation and from Spidey's perspective, which I think is great. Now in the next panel, when you come down and you hear like Jonah is like, hey, we're gonna make Foswell a hero, and then I'm going to bust on Spider-Man even more, even though Spidey completely saved him. This now being at this level is, we are on the street. We are one of the pedestrians or the cops or Jonah or something. So we're seeing it from their perspective, not the Spidey perspective. And so now when we cut back, now again, we're looking down, we get Spidey's perspective on it, which is, why'd I bother? I'm not going to help that guy again. And now he comes up and muses as it's getting dark up on a rooftop. Classic Spidey musing on how his life is not great and how he could have it better. So classic way to end things up. And that is the end of the book and the end of this 3-part series introducing the Kingpin to the Marvel Universe. So let's cut back to the desk and we'll wrap things up. So that was Amazing Spider-Man 52. Excellent cover, some good action, a good finale to this, like I said, this 3-part story arc of introducing the Kingpin of crime and what he's trying to do. So now Spidey has another new villain that he's going to have to deal with, as well as whatever henchmen, thugs, muscle that the Kingpin can dial up. We've seen the end of Frederick Foswell. So a character that started in Amazing Spider-Man number 10 and made it all the way to 52. So hats off to Frederick Foswell and your 42-issue career. For a super side character that started out as kind of a corny villain, Foswell did a good, made it pretty far. So good for him. Overall, it's a pretty good story. It's not the best issue out of this bunch. 50 is great. 51 even was pretty good. Out of a 10, I would give this a 7.5. Like I said, there are a few things that I would do differently. I thought the inking was great. Some of the action was terrific. There's a lot of really cool techniques as far as the shading, the hatching, lighting. There are a few mistakes that I thought, again, I like the page turn to change scenes better. That I think that could have been done better at times. Some of the lighting isn't consistent, stuff like that. But overall, 7.5 out of 10. A good issue, a good wrap up, and now we're in a great place to move forward to the next issue. Which, if you noted that little trailer, little buzz at the end, it's Dr. Octopus again. So we're back to again another original villain, and we'll see what Doc Ock has been up to. So I hope you enjoyed this review of Amazing Spider-Man 52. Like I said, these come out every Monday at 8 a.m. Central. If you enjoy this content, please consider subscribing to the channel. The channel subscription is free. It's just a click of a button. You can choose notifications to turn on notifications so you don't miss any new issues or episodes. We've done some live stream stuff recently, and again, you don't want to miss that. So if you do have the notifications, make sure they are checked on, and you can be notified of streams where you could possibly win free artwork just by being a subscriber here to the channel. Last thing I'm going to leave you with is this piece of artwork. So I'm talking about all this subscription because my push is to reach 1,000 subscribers by the end of 2026. We have added some more. We're now at about 360 subscribers. So thank you to everybody who has been joining the channel. I really appreciate it. When we get to 1,000, we are going to do a drawing from the list of subscribers, and one subscriber is going to win this original piece of Spider-Man art. This is 11 by 17 full color Spider-Man illustration by yours truly. And when we get to 1,000 subscribers, I am going to do a drawing, and this piece of artwork will be shipped to a subscriber for free, completely free, no purchase necessary. All you have to do is click that free subscribe button, and you could be in the running for an original piece of art. So thank you for being here. Thank you for all your time. I hope you enjoyed it. I enjoyed being here, and I'll see you next week for even more Spider-Man. Thanks.